Hey everybody, it's Amanda, and today it's time for chapter 3 in our Esther Bible study. Hey, I'm very excited to continue our Bible study today in the 3rd chapter of Esther as we talk about becoming a woman of influence. And so I am going to go ahead and read the chapter. I'll do a little quick overview and then we'll talk about it, and I have some specific lessons learned. However, this week, as always, I like to start it with the idea of going back and reviewing last week and talking about where we've maybe had some successes or failures. And if you guys want to join in on that conversation, you can leave comments down in underneath the video, and we'll talk about it together, like sharing our experiences, and that'll help one another as we try to do more and follow the Lord. So what we talked about last week was Esther and how she feared the Lord, what a great example she was of Proverbs 31 woman, in that verse says, favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. So the idea was that the task we had was that we were supposed to, no matter what our difficult circumstances were, just really focus on trusting the Lord in that circumstance and kind of just lay back, relax, let Him handle it, and see, what kind of good that He wants to bring out of it. And I said, maybe it could be you stuck in traffic, or, maybe even a big, obstacle or situation that you're in that's challenging, and you just look around and see, how can you have more peace in that situation by trusting God. So anyway, so I actually, the time that I thought about it this past week was only because, and this is why I think it's so good to share our experiences. I mentioned in one of the videos how my friend and I think it was in the first video, in Esther chapter 1 video, which by the way, I'll link them at the top if you haven't checked them out yet. But I mentioned that I had a friend whose husband was supposed to come home and keep her children so she could go out and have like a ladies' night, and he was late getting home because of traffic and other things, and rather than fussing with him, she was, she purposed to say thank you for working so hard for me, give him a kiss, walked out the door, and she was able to enjoy her dinner and have even go home and have a good night with him, where otherwise they might have had an argument or something. And so so that was actually, that has stuck with me for so many years. You guys have no idea. But recently, Rick and I were empty nesters. I'm here at the house by myself the majority of the time. I mean, I am out running errands and doing different things, but there's a lot of time now where I'm by myself, where I'm not used to living like that. And so, so his job is kind of frustrating to be honest with you, because he is in management at his job, and sometimes, he doesn't have regular hours. He has a schedule that he has to work, but more often than not, he's not working that schedule. He's working over, or, the schedule changes, and it kind of frustrates me because I really rely on him sticking to his schedule so that I can make dinner plans or go out and do anything. But anyway, so this week, what actually came to my mind was he had said something to me that I'd been complaining about his job, and he's like, you can't really complain about my job. I've got to work. This is how it's got to be. And he's like, and it really makes me feel like you don't appreciate what I'm doing if, you're always complaining about it. And I didn't even realize that I was complaining about it that much, but he felt that way. And so I was like, well, you know what, then I've really got to kind of change my thought process. So I don't know that I was super successful, but certainly the Lord used last week's Bible study to at least get me thinking along those lines, that rather than complaining about the situation that I feel is difficult because he's working so much and I'm here by myself, I really need to trust the Lord that, this is, my husband thinks it's what's best for our family. And so I need to kind of get on board with that. I need to see the value in it and be more appreciative to him, so he doesn't feel like I'm complaining a lot, and really just try to make a concerted effort to focus on the good and not just focus on the bad. And we even talked about that in our regular Bible study this week, the idea that Rick told this really great story. I might link that at the top too, so you can check that out, about a buzzard. you know, a buzzard who's, you know, flying in the air, and all he sees, there's beautiful trees, and there's mountains, and there's the sky, and there's flowers, and there's all these beautiful things. And the buzzard doesn't see that. The buzzard only sees the dead things on the ground. And it's like, don't be a buzzard, you know. So if you're looking for things to be bad, then you'll find things that are bad. So I've made a more concerted effort with the idea that this thing that I think is hard is that Rick working all the time and me being here by myself, to really just see the value in it, how the Lord can use it as a positive thing in our life. And even more than that, try to be thankful to my husband and not complain for him working. And so I actually think it has made a bit of a difference. It's only been obviously a few days, because it's been like, you know, a week since we started doing this last Bible study, but I still think he seems happier. And when he's happy, then I'm happier, right? It's a joint effort here. So that's my experience. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of good and bad. There's success in that when I try to be focused on that, I think it's making a positive impact. And when I don't, it's making a negative impact. But I still think it's a good lesson. You know, that just happens to be the difficulty that I'm dealing with. But whatever difficulty in your life, maybe you can look at it from the perspective of not a buzzard and really see how you can fear the Lord. So anyway, that goes back to chapter 2. That's my experience from last week. So now we'll talk about chapter 3. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And like I said, we'll read it. I'll give you a quick overview, and then we'll talk about the things that we're going to be learning this week. So Esther chapter 3. If you're ready, we'll start at verse 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom. And their laws are diverse from all people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, to the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, The silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by posts into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing for a commandment is to be given in every province, was published unto all people, that they should be ready against the day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. So here we have the story where everything changes. So you have Haman, who is promoted into a position of authority such that all of the people are supposed to be bowing down to him and giving him reverence according to the king's command. But Mordecai, being a Jew, being a believer, he does not wish to bow down to anyone save the king and the Lord. That's who he's giving reverence to, because the Lord placed the king in authority, and ultimately his ultimate authority goes back to the Lord. So the people who are the servants see this, and they're like, why is Mordecai not bowing? That's not good. And they try to talk to him about it multiple times, and he's not changing what he does. So they go to Haman. And Haman sees that he's not bowing down to him and not giving him any reverence. And he is furious. He is like, how dare he not reverence me? And so, but he also sees that it's not just Mordecai. He looks around and he sees this is something that is applicable to all the Jews. And so therefore he's like, you know what? We can't let them hang out. We're going to get rid of them. And so the interesting thing is he casts lots, which they called pur. And he tries to find the best, luckiest day for this destruction to happen that he's planning. And by the way, today, the day that you guys watch this, is actually the first day of Purim, which is the celebration of Esther. We're going to read more about it in later chapters, but today is the first day of that celebration, and it has to do with this day of casting of the lots, or the day that was cast in the lots, I should say. So, so that's interesting that this comes up on this day. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, so he casts lots to find the lucky day. Lucky. And then he goes to the king and says, hey king, you know, there's this group of people, they're not really following your laws, and I have this idea that they should be destroyed because we don't want them hanging around, and it's going to cost this much. I need this many people. How about, would it be okay with you if I take care of this? Because I'm looking out for you. You know, he always puts it in such a way that he seems like the good guy. And the king's like, you know what? That makes sense. Here's my ring. You go handle that and make it happen. So Haman does. He gets it all sorted out. He gets the decree and he gets everything published in all of the places and all of the languages so that everybody knows the day is coming that the Jews will be destroyed. But the community itself, it's not like they're behind it. The community is perplexed about everything that's going on. At the same time, the king and Haman, they're just hanging out like nothing's going on. They don't realize that they've stirred up a nest that they really don't want to get into. but anyway, so that's the overarching story of chapter 3 and what's going on. So here we have, I always try to give you an additional verse to go with the week. And one thing that stuck out to me this week was the idea of a heritage. The idea that Mordecai and the Jewish people, frankly, they had a heritage that was strong, and that no matter what was happening in the world around them, they were clinging to God's ways. And it was starting something that was going to set a standard that was going to impact generations, frankly, all the way out till today when people still celebrate Purim. But they didn't realize that. They were just following the Lord, and so it left a godly heritage that continues, like I said, to this day. So I thought of this verse, and it's one that I think probably a lot of you have heard. Isaiah 54:17, it says, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. And so I had this idea because, you know, the big story of Esther is Haman creating this plot to destroy the Jews. And Esther, of course, as you know, is going to play a part in making sure that this plot doesn't come to be. But Esther is put there by the Lord, who is ensuring that his people will remain and no weapon formed against them will prosper. But the thing is that Haman, in his worldly wisdom, really thinks that what he's doing is a good thing. He has no concept of what it is to go up against God's people, and yet he's going to learn. He's going to learn a heavy lesson. He thinks that the person who is due reverence and respect is him, and he does not recognize that the person who deserves reverence and respect is actually the Lord, and that is his complete and utter downfall. But we're not going to focus on Haman. We're not going to focus on Haman because ultimately, I mean, we know his plot. He has seen that there are God's people and they are going to follow God, and he says, you know what, they're going to be destroyed. And he has attempted to come up with a plot to destroy them. He's even gotten the king on board, and all of this is set in motion now. But what he doesn't realize is he's set in motion his own destruction, trying to destroy God's people. But I think the bigger story here is Mordecai. You know, we are in, right now in our regular Bible study, we're going through the books of Samuel, 1st and 2nd Samuel. And the interesting thing about the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel is actually only featured just a little bit in the two books. You know, he comes in on at the beginning, he's prophet, he deals with Saul, and at one point he dies, but then you continue the story of 1st and 2nd Samuel. And the reason why the book is called 1st and 2nd Samuel is because ultimately those books are about the impact Samuel had. Because when you actually read the books, what they're largely about is the rise of David and to being the king of Israel, right? But the book's not called David. It's not 1st and 2nd David, it's 1st and 2nd Samuel, because it was Samuel and his righteousness, his following the Lord. Frankly, it started with his mother that started the ball rolling to where David could rise up as king. And this book is called Esther. Esther, she's not even in this chapter, you know what I mean? But she plays an integral part. And even though the book is called the Book of Esther, it features heavily Mordecai, very much like 1st and 2nd Samuel featured David. It's really about David. I really feel like this book is largely about Mordecai, but it's rooted in Esther's graciousness and favor. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense to you. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but that's what I think. And the reason why I think that is even when you go to the end of the book of Esther, it ends hearing about what happened to Mordecai and the godly heritage he leaves. But we're not going to go there yet. We're going to get there eventually. But Mordecai is an important part of the story, and he's certainly an important part of this chapter because his behavior and his actions kind of paint the picture of what it was for all godly Jews at that time. He was the one who refused to bow to anyone other than the Lord and the king that the Lord had set up. He was the one who said, I am going to follow the Lord even if I'm not popular, even if it costs me my job, even if ultimately it would cost him his life. You know, he was still going to do what the Lord required of him. And he was setting a good example, certainly for Esther, who was going to be called upon to do great things. And had he not already set that standard in the home and raised her that way, then Esther would not have been able to go out and do the things that she did that would ultimately save the Jewish people. But Mordecai was the one who was setting the standard, creating this godly heritage that was going to be something that would impact her and, frankly, like I said, the rest of the people who follow the Lord from there on out. But he was just an example, like I said, of the many Jews, because even Haman saw that, yes, this is Mordecai. Mordecai is not doing it. It was making him very angry. But Mordecai was just one example of the many faithful Jews. And I think this is true too. Like, there might be believers now that get a lot of attention. And you might be one of the believers that are out there, you get no one even notices that you're following the Lord. You think. But it could be that there's people watching from afar and seeing your faithfulness, and it's impacting them for the good or bad. But regardless, it's making an impact. You know, people are seeing you and seeing your faithfulness and seeing how you are trusting and following the Lord. And, you know, like I said, perhaps making them angry, perhaps making them happy. But the point is just that it's noticed. And if they're noticing it, you better believe that God is noticing it, and he knows who you are and what you're doing for him. So here's the thing. If you're going to be faithful to the Lord, then, you know, there may be situations that arise because of your faithfulness. Sometimes it's positive. Sometimes, you know, people notice and they come and see you and they say, hey, you know, I've noticed you're a believer. I'm going through a hard time. Can you help me with this? Because I'm really struggling. And then you get to be a blessing, get to minister to people, and that's wonderful. Sometimes you might be, you know, criticized or victimized because of your faith. And the truth of the matter is that we have to remember that the Lord has promised us exactly what I just read in Isaiah, that ultimately no weapon formed against you will prosper. You know, God is there with you. And sometimes what seems like a loss might actually be a gain. You know, this whole circumstance that Haman was setting up, I'm sure it seemed bleak at the time. I mean, how could it not? There are things that are going to come to you in your life that you look around and you think, Lord, why? I am trying to be faithful to you. I'm trying to do good. Why is this thing in my life that is so difficult when I'm just trying to follow you? And you can't see beyond that the Lord is going to use this thing that is challenging and difficult for your good. You know, when all of this circumstance rounds out, the Lord is actually going to be getting rid of the enemies of his people, and he's actually going to be setting his people up for even more power and success than they would have had in the first place. So even, like I said, even though all of this seems in the moment very bleak, and whatever's happening in your life may seem very challenging, know that the Lord is putting you in this position, giving you an opportunity to be faithful, giving you an opportunity to show and demonstrate your love for him and to others, so that he can then do a great work that's going to bring about a positive change in your life, something that's for your ultimate good. Again, our verse in Isaiah 54 says, "This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me." So, saith the Lord, I don't want to forget that part. So here's the thing. We need to consider our heritage. We need to consider what we are doing and how it is out there and how it is impacting others. Because, you know, just like within your family, you think about how you're going to leave a heritage for your children. I think a lot of people really consider now a financial heritage for their children. You know, what are they going to leave? Like an inheritance. What are they going to leave to them that's going to be of value to them when they're gone? And we think more about the financial inheritance than we do about our heritage. And the inheritance, the financial one, could go away. And then the children would be left, you know, kind of fumbling and trying to do whatever they could to build their own. But a heritage doesn't go away. A heritage is something that's ingrained in them, something that they will have and carry with them forever. I can't help but think of like Daniel. Remember Daniel and all of the children of Israel were carried away? And Daniel was a very young man in the king's house and faced with a lot of choices that would have been challenging for anyone. You know, there were a large group of God's children there, and many of them made decisions that weren't necessarily following the Lord. But you can tell Daniel had a godly heritage, because when he was put in that situation and faced with choices and challenges, he could lean back on the wisdom that he knew from God's word and say, you know what? I know that this isn't what's best for me, and I am not going to take part in this. And what happens is that's just the beginning and one story within the life of Daniel that brings him to a place that many years later, he's considered one of the wise men, one of the people that's most respected there in the king's house. And Daniel has a great opportunity, but it all began with his faithfulness that came as a result of the heritage that he had before he was a young man out alone in a foreign country, you know, dealing with unbelievable difficulties. And so when I'm talking about the heritage that we're building, you know, we need to think about what we can do to make sure that our children, yes, but even more than that, other believers that are around us are impacted in a positive way by our faith and our trust in the Lord. Making sure that we are following him faithfully in such a way that it's visible, that it's sincere, and that it's distinctive, that it's purposeful, that it's intentional. You know, Mordecai wasn't doing this by accident. Mordecai wasn't going with the flow, like, oh, this isn't gonna matter, you know, whatever, I'll bow to Haman, but I don't need it. He was sincere. He said, you know, I am just not going to take part in any of these things that are going to dishonor God. And he refused to do it. Even when people talked to him multiple times and tried to convince him, you know, there have been a lot of things in recent years that people have tried over and over and over again to push people into. And, you know, sometimes you really have to be able to stand on your values, stand on your beliefs, and say, you know what, I am not going to participate in this, and it doesn't matter what the consequences are. Very much like Mordecai did, and be willing to stand on it as a biblical foundation. But like I said, it's a heritage, because what your children and the people around you see that you're doing will impact them, will make a difference. You know, anytime that you give in, your children are going to see that you know, maybe it's not such a big deal if they give in. I really feel like one of the best gifts that we could give our children was the gift of discipline. And I'm not talking about punishment. I feel like whenever people hear the word discipline with children, they automatically think of some kind of punishment. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about literal self-discipline. You know, training them to get up at an alarm clock. You know, training them to eat on a regular schedule, training them to have a bedtime, training them to do things and make choices that are going to keep them strong and healthy and responsible and reliable. You know, training them to, and in the spiritual aspect, training them to have personal Bible time, training them to have prayer time, training them to follow God's word, not just read it, not just go to church, but to actually follow it and make it an important part of their life. And those are things that we have to be actively pursuing, actively doing in our own life so that they can see it. So when I say that it's important to teach our children discipline when it comes to a godly heritage, that just means that we have to be disciplined in our own selves. You know, there was a time that I was having some health issues and I had to change my diet. And I had to change my diet to be completely vegan for a good long period of time. And it was challenging. And I didn't have anybody standing over my shoulder making sure I was eating vegan. I had to do it because I wanted to be healthy. And like I said, nobody had to stand there and tell me. I needed to do it for myself. And I remember at that time, you know, my kids were there and they would try, sometimes they would say, well, Mom, it wouldn't be such a big deal if you had this. And I'd be like, nope, I'm committed to this and I'm going to do this. And so one of the benefits of that time is that, and I didn't realize it when it was happening. When it was happening, I was solely thinking about my health and how my health needed to change. And so I had to be disciplined and make sure that that was done right. Well, there came certain times when our children had to do things that they didn't particularly want to do, that they found challenging, and yet they would sometimes go back and say, well, Mom, you know, she gave up this so I can do this. And that really warmed my heart as a mom, because I felt like there was one time I succeeded in doing something that was, you know, helpful to them. And I thought that's such a gift to them, that they know that they don't have to give in to what they want all the time. They can actually discipline their own selves and say, you know what, even though I want this, it's not in my best interest, so I'm going to not take any part in it. And it's very much like Mordecai here. You know, Mordecai has set a strong standard. Mordecai has said, I don't care what I am risking. I am going to do what I think is right and what I think honors God, even if it gets me to a place where I might have to actually pay for it. And I think you can see that playing out in Esther's life, because even though we're not there yet in the story, if you do know it, there comes a time where Esther has to take some chances and say, you know what, I am going to do this because it's right. And if I perish, I believe is her exact words. And so, you know, we have to be willing, like I said, to discipline our own selves, to make our own selves right and follow the Lord and honor the Lord, if we're going to try to encourage other people to do it. It's like a parent who, you know, tells their child, hey, you know, look at me. I'm sitting here, you know, I have a problem with alcohol, and I'm an alcoholic, and I have a drinking problem, and it's terrible. I don't want you to do it. And tell their children over and over again. And frankly, we've worked in addictions ministry for years, and we've seen it. We've seen them say, well, I've told my children they don't want any part of this. And you know what happens? It's very sad, but oftentimes the children will come back and the children will take part in the same behaviors that their parents did. And the parents really did genuinely try to tell them, don't do this. But the problem is that the heritage that they left was not their words, it was their actions. And so the children followed the actions more than the words. And it's that old saying, actions speak louder than words. So again, when we're thinking about a godly heritage, it's not about what we're saying to our children. It's not about what we're teaching them with our words. It's about what we are doing, that they are seeing, that they are soaking in, that is going to be a part of who they are and a part of what makes their walk with God successful or not. You know, whether or not they're going to be faithful or not. You set the standard. Again, when I had a daughter, I've said this many times, many times. I had boys first, and I thought about my boys. But when I had a daughter, the verse that hit me hard, was the verse that says, as is the mother, so is the daughter. And it's not even really talking about parenting, but it just says it so matter-of-factly, that it's like it's a solid truth. Like, however the mother is, the daughter is going to be. And I tell you what, that haunted me. I was like, I have to be whatever kind of woman I want my daughter to be at like minimum. And it made me really up my standards of who, you know, there were a lot of things that I kind of let go in my life. And when I thought about it in terms of me, I didn't care so much. But when I thought about it in terms of, do I want my daughter to do these things? Then it was like, you know what? No, I don't. You know, or do I want my daughter, like when it came to eating vegetables and things like that? You know, there are some vegetables that I avoided. Well, I gotta tell you, I really purposed to try to eat more healthy fruits and vegetables when I had the children, because I thought, I want them to eat it. I want them to enjoy it. Funny enough, my daughter eats mostly vegan now. But the whole point of that is that, you know, we have to recognize that our actions are going to be the godly heritage that we leave for, not to, I'm emphasizing the children, but also others. We make a huge impact on others. Think about your own life. And I tell you, if you really think, there's probably 5 people at least who you've seen in your life who their behaviors have impacted you either positively or negatively. And you can see how you can impact people beyond your own family, maybe people in the workplace, maybe people at your church. I know that there's a church that I was a part of as a teenager. It made a tremendous impact on me. Tremendous, because the people there were completely different than anyone else I'd ever met. And so I knew that they were genuine in their walk to follow the Lord. And when I became an adult and I was living on my own, guess what church I went back to? That one. Guess what church my children came to know the Lord in? That one. Guess what church my husband came to know the Lord in? That one. And it was such a big impact because the people there, I knew it, I saw it with my own eyes, had a godly heritage, and I wanted it in my own family. I wanted it in my own life. And now look, that church, the people who had that godly heritage impacted us, and now we are out impacting other people. You know, we have a ministry online. Ricky's out doing missions work in Christian camps. Like, we are out there making an impact. And I'm not saying that to say something about us. I'm saying that to give credit to the Lord because of the church that initially impacted me. Everything grows and it multiplies. And we have to consider our heritage for the Lord. Is it godly? Again, that verse in Isaiah 54, verse 17, it says, this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. And the heritage that it's referring to is the idea that no weapon that's formed against them will prosper. Every tongue that rises against them in judgment shall be condemned. That heritage that if you're faithful, God is going to care for you. And he says, and their righteousness is of me. Ultimately, the righteousness that we're going to have for that godly heritage is going to come from the Lord. You have to be in his word. You have to be in prayer. You have to be following him. It's not your own works. It's his works living out through you. You can't have a godly heritage unless you are focused on him. So our task for this week, I always give you a task every week. We mentioned it at the beginning of the video. And this week, what I want you to do is really consider your heritage. Okay, I want you to consider how you're impacting other people, maybe even specific people that you can impact this week. And think about what you can do to, number one, have a righteousness that's of the Lord. So really consider, first of all, your relationship with the Lord and whether or not it's close enough that he can make an impact with you, that you can actually step out and do something bold like Mordecai did and really take a stand for him in such a way that other people will notice and see that you love the Lord. Not for show, Mordecai wasn't trying to make a show of it. He was just living his life faithfully. And so that's what I want you to do. I want you to think about this godly heritage. Think about people you impact. And think about times that you might possibly let something slip. You know, might not think something is a big deal. And really just, you know, take a step of faith and say, you know, I'm not going to do it anymore. One way that I think is a simple one that people might not think about. Some people use bad language. Ephesians 5:4, folks. It talks about your language. But you know, perhaps when you get in public and you're around other people, you might say things that, you know, probably probably aren't something that would be good to come from the mouth of a Christian, but you don't think it's a big deal. And, you know, maybe let's take a step of faith and say, you know what? I know that people see me, they know I'm a believer, and I'm going to, you know, really purpose to have the right kind of language that's going to, you know, make people make it have an impact. And you don't have to make an announcement about it. You don't have to say, I'm not using bad language anymore. Just don't do it. I guarantee people will notice. I guarantee it. They will notice. They might even say something to you about it. And then, you know, try to be humble. Don't make a big show of it. Just say, you know what? I just thought about it and I really want to follow the Lord, and I want to make sure the things that come out of my mouth are good things, and be positive and see if it doesn't make an impact. See if it doesn't, I'm telling you. That's just one example, but think in your own life. Maybe there's some areas, like I said, that you've let slip and hadn't really given any thought to. Maybe everybody else is doing it. It's not a big deal. Think about that and think about how you can just say, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to, you know, take a stand in my own life. It doesn't have to, like I said, be an announcement. Just in my own life, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to take this area of my life and I'm going to honor the Lord with it. I am going to set a godly example, be a godly heritage. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to seek out God's word, and I'm going to really try to be faithful and honor him, and watch and see. You know, even if it runs you into trouble, even if, you know, people kind of think, oh yeah, she's gotten all high and mighty now, you know, give it some time. He is going to use it for good. He is not going to let any weapon formed against you prosper. He is going to take care of you and turn any difficulties that even do arise into something that is for your good and his glory. So this week, we're talking about a godly heritage set forth by Mordecai, who, even though, like I said, he's facing down what seems like a terrible judgment, it's actually going to turn out to be something amazing. So anyway, all right, well, that is it for this week. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this Esther Bible study. Come back next week and we will continue in Esther chapter 4. Again, thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Bye.